After 39 years of marriage, I thought I knew every corner of Laura's heart. I thought love, routine, and decades of shared life had left no room for secrets. But that day in the hospital, while holding her hand as she drifted under anesthesia, my world cracked open. The smell of antiseptic was sharp and cold, clinging to everything, even my skin. The beeping of the monitors was steady, almost comforting, the kind of background noise you don't notice until it becomes unbearable. I sat beside her bed, stroking her hand, thinking this was just another small moment in a long marriage. A simple knee surgery, nothing dangerous, but I wanted to be here. That's what 39 years does. You show up for the little things, not just the storms. Her eyelids fluttered, the drugs pulling her deeper, and I leaned closer, expecting her to murmur something sweet or silly. But then, in a voice soft as a sigh, she whispered, "Where's my Harry?" The words cut through me like a blade. My thumb, mid-circle on her knuckles, froze. Harry. The name was alien, wrong, like hearing your spouse speak in a language you never knew they understood. My heart thundered so loudly I thought the nurse might hear. I told myself I'd misheard, that it was just the anesthesia talking, some scrambled dream thought. But I couldn't shake it. I asked myself again and again, who's Harry?
Not a cousin.
Not a colleague. No, the way she said it, tender and intimate, wasn't casual. It was longing. And that longing wasn't for me. The nurse glanced up from her chart, asked if everything was fine.
I nodded, though my throat felt tight, my chest burning. I lied because admitting otherwise would have meant cracking open a truth I wasn't ready to face.
I kept holding her hand, but it was like holding the hand of a stranger, someone whose life I suddenly realized I didn't fully know. When the nurse left, silence pressed in, heavy as stone. The drip of the IV, the hum of the machines, my uneven breathing, they were the only sounds left. I looked at Laura, her hair silvering with age, her face serene under the oxygen mask, and for the first time in decades,
I didn't recognize her. That was the moment the life I thought I'd built began to collapse.
I thought of our 30th anniversary, how she'd laughed, her hand squeezing mine as we danced in our living room to some old Sinatra tune. That Laura wouldn't say another man's name like that, would she? I pulled out my phone, my fingers clumsy. The screen glowed harsh in the dim room. I typed Harry Chicago into Google. My pulse-hammering results flooded in LinkedIn profiles, obituaries, random blogs. I scrolled desperate, then switched to Facebook. I typed Harry into Laura's friend list, my thumb shaking. There, Harry Noah Wilson. His profile picture showed a man, late 50s, with a cocky grin, standing too close to a woman in a blue dress.
I zoomed in. My stomach lurched.
It was Laura. They were at a picnic. Autumn leaves scattered behind them, her smile wide, his arm brushing hers. A caption, "Perfect day with great company."
Posted a year ago. I scrolled further.
More photos, coffee shops.
A jazz club.
Their faces lit by candlelight. Each image was a blade carving away the life I thought I knew. Laura, my Laura, smiling like she hadn't in years with him.
I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles widened.
The room spun, the antiseptic smell choking me. I wanted to shake her awake, demand answers, but she was out, lost in whatever dream had conjured his name. The doctor stepped in, his clipboard crisp against his coat.
"Surgery's about to start. Mr. Ben, she'll be fine."
I nodded, barely hearing him. "Good, thanks." My voice sounded hollow. Not mine. He left, and I sat there staring at the photo on my screen.
Laura and Harry laughing as if I'd never existed.
My chest burned. A mix of grief and something sharper.
Anger, maybe?
Or the first sparks of something I hadn't felt in years. Betrayal. The door to the room stood open, the corridor beyond bright and bustling. Nurses passed, their shoes squeaking on the tile. That open door felt like my life now, exposed, out of my control. I stood, my legs unsteady, and slipped the phone into my pocket. The monitors kept humming, indifferent. I walked out, the door clicking softly behind me, and headed for the corridor. The weight of that name, Harry, pulling me towards something I wasn't ready to face. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I stood outside Laura's recovery room, my hand on the door, hesitating. The photo of her with Harry still burned in my mind, but I needed answers. Not from a scream from her. I pushed the door open, the hinges creaking, and stepped into the dim room. Rain tapped the window, a soft, relentless rhythm. Laura was awake, propped up on pillows, her face pale but alert. The bandage on her knee peeked out from the blanket, and in 4 lines snaked from her arm. She smiled, weak but familiar. "John, you didn't have to stay."
I forced a smile, my lips tight. Wanted to.
I sat beside her, the chair scraping against the floor. Her hand reached for mine, but I kept mine on my knee, fingers curled. "How are you feeling?"
Tired, sore.
Her voice was soft, but her eyes darted to mine, searching.
Everything okay?
I swallowed the question I've been chewing on since the morning, clawing its way out.
Laura, who's Harry?
Her face didn't change, but her fingers twitched, clutching the blanket.
Harry? She laughed.
A brittle sound.
I don't know any Harry. Why?
You said his name before the surgery.
Under the anesthesia. I kept my voice even, but my pulse thumped in my ears.
You asked where he was. Her eyes widened just for a second, then narrowed. "John, I was out of it." Probably mumbling nonsense.
You know how those drugs mess with you?
She reached for my hand again, but I leaned back, my chair creaking. "Nonsense," I said, sharper than I meant.
You said, "Where's my Harry?"
Clear as day. She sighed, her lips pursing. "You're reading too much into it."
I don't know any Harry. Maybe I meant Laurie, that nurse from my book club.
Her voice was smooth, practiced, but her fingers kept twisting the blanket, betraying her.
I stared at her, the woman I'd built a life with, and saw a stranger.
I thought of a fight we'd had years ago, after she'd hidden a credit card bill. She'd promised to be honest, her eyes wet with tears. That Laura was gone. This one was lying, and I knew it. "Okay," I said, standing. "Rest up." My voice was flat, but inside, anger coiled tight, ready to snap. She nodded, her smile faltering, and I left the room, the door swinging shut behind me. The drive home was a blur, rain smearing the windshield, the wipers' thump matching my heartbeat. Our house loomed ahead, its faded siding glistening under the storm. Inside, it smelled of old wood and coffee, the kind of comfort that used to ground me. Now it felt like a museum of a life I didn't recognize. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd shared countless dinners, where Laura had once carved her initials into the wood, laughing. Now it was just a surface for my laptop, its glow casting shadows on the walls. I opened Facebook again, my fingers steady this time. I clicked on Laura's profile, her friend list, a maze of names. There he was.
Harry Noah Wilson.
I hesitated, then opened his page. His life spilled out in pixels, a financial advisor office in downtown Chicago, posts about golf and wine tastings.
A photo of him and Laura at a cafe.
A comment below, "Best day," dated 6 months ago. My jaw clenched. I clicked his About section. An address blinked back. A sleek building in the Loop, all glass and ambition. I jotted it down, my pen digging into the paper. The rain grew louder, hammering the roof. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me. The table, once a place of warmth, now held my unraveling. I closed the laptop, the click final, and stared at the window where rain streaked the glass like tears. Harry was real and he was close.
Tomorrow I'd find him. I'd watch him.
And I'd figure out just how deep this betrayal ran. The cafe was alive with noise, clinking cups, the hiss of the espresso machine, laughter from a group in the corner. I sat by the window, a newspaper spread before me.
Untouched coffee cooling in my mug.
My eyes weren't on the headlines. They were on the door, waiting for Harry Noah Wilson. The address from his Facebook led me here.
A trendy spot in the suburbs.
All wood paneling and oversized windows, the kind of place Laura loved. My stomach twisted at the thought.
I'd never done this. Followed someone, played detective.
At 62, I was an engineer, not a spy. But the image of Laura's smile in those photos, her hand brushing his, drove me here. I shifted in my seat, the chair scraping softly, and checked my phone. A note with Harry's office address stared back along with a screenshot of his profile. I'd memorized his face, sharp jaw, smug grin, eyes that looked right through you. The door chimed, and there he was. Harry strode in, his suit crisp, his hair slicked back. He scanned the room, his gaze skimming past me, and headed to a table in the back. My grip tightened on the mug, the ceramic hot against my palm. I lifted the newspaper higher, peeking over the edge. He sat, pulling out his phone, his fingers tapping fast. Then he glanced at the door, nervous, like he was expecting someone. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. My heart pounded, but I wasn't here to confront him. Not yet. I needed to know who he was, what he was hiding. I remembered Laura's phone, how she'd started keeping it face down, her fingers quick to lock the screen. Harry's phone was out now, its screen glowing. He typed, then slid it into his pocket, his eyes darting to the door again. I stood casual and wandered toward the counter, passing his table. I pretended to search for sugar, my ears straining. He was talking to a man in a grey suit, their voices low. "We need to wrap this up fast," Harry said, his tone clipped.
No loose ends.
The other man nodded, muttering something I couldn't catch. Harry's phone buzzed and he pulled it out, his thumbs swiping quickly. He frowned, then tucked it away, his movements sharp. My pulse quickened, loose ends. This wasn't just about an affair. I thought of Laura, her nervous fingers in the hospital, her lies. What were they hiding? I grabbed a sugar packet and returned to my seat, my mind racing. I pulled out my phone, jotting a note.
Harry, deal.
Something bigger than Laura. My fingers shook, but I kept my face blank. Just another guy reading the news. Harry's companion left and he stayed sipping an espresso, his eyes flicking to his phone every few seconds. I watched the cafe's warmth fading, replaced by a cold certainty. This man wasn't just a fling. He was trouble. I thought of our house, the kitchen table where I'd found his address, the life I thought was mine.
A memory flashed.
Laura tucking her phone under a napkin at dinner, her smile too bright. She was part of this, whatever it was. The sun broke through the clouds outside, casting shadows across the cafe. Harry stood, slipping his phone into his jacket, and left, the door chiming behind him. I waited, then folded the newspaper, my decision made. I needed more than photos, more than suspicions. Laura's phone was still at the hospital in her bag. If there were answers, they'd be there. I stepped outside, the autumn air sharp against my skin, and headed for my car. The cafe's noise faded, replaced by the crunch of leaves under my shoes. I glanced at my phone, the note about Harry glowing on the screen. Whatever he was hiding, I'd find it.
And when I did, I'd make sure he and Laura answered for it.
The hospital was quieter at night, the hum of machines softer, like a heartbeat slowing down. I slipped into Laura's room, the door easing shut behind me. Rain battered the window, a steady drum that matched the pulse in my temples. Laura slept, her chest rising and falling under the thin blanket, her face calm, almost innocent. But I knew better now. The phone on her bedside table glinted under the dim light, a small black rectangle holding truths she'd never tell me. I hesitated, my hand hovering over it. The room felt smaller, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic and betrayal. If I was wrong, if this was some misunderstanding, I'd be violating her trust. But then I saw her in that photo with Harry, her smile brighter than it had been for me in years. My fingers closed around the phone, cold and smooth. She stirred, her hand twitching, and I froze, my breath caught. She didn't wake. I tapped the screen.
No passcode.
Laura never bothered with one, said it was too much hassle. Her carelessness was my gain. The Messages app glowed, and there it was. Harry Noah Wilson, his name at the top of her recent chats. My thumb trembled as I opened the thread. The screen burned my eyes. Each word a fresh wound.
Harry, miss you already.
When's the next getaway? Laura, soon. John's clueless as usual. Harry, poor old bore. Bet he's still tinkering with his gadgets.
Laura, lol, always, you're the spark I need.
I stopped, my chest tight like someone had sucked the air from the room. Clueless, bore, 39 years.
And this was what she thought of me.
I scrolled further, my jaw clenched. Messages stretched back years. Hotel bookings, late-night calls, her laughing at my predictable routines. One from last month hit hardest. Harry, he'll never suspect. Too busy playing the good husband.
Laura, good, let him.
My vision blurred, not from tears, but from rage, hot and sharp. I wanted to scream, to shake her awake and demand, why? Why me? Why us? I thought of our last anniversary.
How I brought her roses.
How she'd smiled thinly and said, "You're sweet, John, sweet." Like I was a child, not her husband. The memory twisted, poisoned by her words on this screen. I kept reading, unable to stop. A recent message caught my eye. "Harry, we need to be careful with those papers."
Keep them safe. Papers? My pulse quickened.
This wasn't just an affair. There was something else, something bigger. I scrolled, but the details were vague, buried in their coded language. My engineer's mind kicked in, piecing together fragments. But I needed more. The phone nearly slipped from my grip, my knuckles white.
I wanted to hurl it against the wall, let it shatter like my trust, but I didn't. I set it back on the table, exactly as it was, my hands shaking.
Laura murmured something in her sleep, her voice soft, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd loved. Then I remembered her words. Clueless bore, that woman was gone. The rain grew louder, pounding the glass. The room's dim light cast shadows across Laura's face, hiding her lies in the dark. But the phone's glow had shown me enough. I stood, my fists clenched, and walked to the door. The corridor beyond was silent, the hospital asleep. I stepped out, the door clicking shut, and the rain's rhythm followed me, urging me to think, to plan, to act. The park was still at dawn, the air crisp with the scent of wet earth and fallen leaves. I sat on a bench, its wood damp from last night's rain, my breath visible in the chill.
Leaves drifted down, red and gold, piling at my feet like fragments of the life I'd lost.
My notebook rested on my lap, its metal spiral cold against my fingers. I'd come here to think, to make sense of the jagged pieces Laura's betrayal had left behind.
39 years.
I'd given her everything. My time, my dreams, my trust. I remembered a moment years back when I'd turned down a promotion that would have meant moving to Seattle. Laura said she couldn't leave her friends, her routine. So I stayed, built our life here in this quiet suburb. She'd kissed me then, called me her rock. Now I saw it, her rock, her bore, her fool. I opened the notebook, my pen scratching the paper.
Expose them, but smart.
My engineer's mind took over, mapping out the problem like a circuit diagram. Laura and Harry thought I was predictable, weak. They'd underestimated me, and that was their mistake.
I wouldn't scream or beg.
I'd dismantle their lies piece by piece until they had nowhere to hide.
I wrote Harry's papers.
Find out what they are. The message I'd seen hinted at something beyond their affair, something that made Harry nervous. I jotted down ideas.
Follow him again.
Check his office.
Use their arrogance against them.
My pen moved faster, the ink smudging under a stray raindrop. I thought of Laura's laugh in those messages, her casual cruelty. She'd never see this coming. A memory surfaced, Laura's voice sharp.
Years ago, you're so predictable, John, always playing it safe.
We'd been arguing about a vacation. Me wanting a quiet cabin, her pushing for Paris. I'd given in like always, predictable. The word stung now, but it also fueled me. I'd show her unpredictable. I'd show them both. The park stirred around me. A jogger passed, her sneakers crunching leaves. A child laughed in the distance, chasing a dog. The normally of it felt distant, like a language I'd forgotten. I closed my eyes, letting the sounds fade, and saw our kitchen table, where we'd shared coffee and dreams. Now it was my war room where I planned this. I wrote, "Start with Harry, he's the weak link." My fingers tightened around the notebook, the spiral digging into my palm.
I wasn't the man they thought I was. Not anymore. I thought of the hospital.
Laura's lies, Harry's smug grin. They'd built their secret world thinking I'd never notice, but I had, and I'd tear it down. The sky lightened, clouds parting to reveal a sliver of blue. I stood, tucking the notebook into my jacket. Leaves clung to my shoes, soft and fleeting, like the past I was letting go. I walked toward the park's exit, my steps firm, the weight of my plan settling in my chest. The game was on, and I was ready to play. The mailbox stood under a flickering street lamp, its metal rusted, the flag creaking in the evening breeze. I clutched the envelope, its edges sharp against my fingers. Inside were printed photos.
Laura and Harry at that picnic, their smiles frozen in betrayal.
No note, no signature, just the truth, raw and undeniable. I'd addressed it to Sophia Wilson, Harry's wife. Her name scrolled in block letters to keep my handwriting anonymous. I glanced around. The street was quiet, the suburban houses glowing with warm light. My car waited a block away, engine off, keys heavy in my pocket. This was it, my first move. My heart raced, not with fear, but with something else.
Something alive.
I lifted the mailbox flag, the metal squeaking, and hesitated.
One last chance to back out.
Then I thought of Laura's messages, clueless, bore. I dropped the envelope in, the thud final, and lowered the flag. I crossed the street, slipping behind a row of bushes near Harry's house. Its modern facade loomed, all glass and sharp angles, the kind of place that screamed money.
Light spilled from the living room, and I crouched, my breath shallow.
I'd found Sophia's name on Harry's Facebook, her profile full of charity events and forced smiles. She deserved to know. Minutes passed, my knees aching against the damp ground. Then the front door opened, and Sophia appeared, the envelope in her hand. She tore it open, her face lit by the porch light. The photos fluttered out and she froze, her mouth parting. I leaned closer, the branches scratching my jacket. She stormed inside, leaving the door ajar. Her voice cut through the night, sharp and raw.
Harry, get down here.
I edged forward, peering through the window. Harry appeared, his tie loose, a glass of wine in hand. Sophia thrust the photos at him, her hands shaking.
What is this? Who is she?
Harry's face drained of colour. Sophia, it's not what you think.
Not what I think.
She slammed the photos onto the coffee table, one sliding to the floor.
You're sneaking around with some woman and I'm supposed to believe.
It's nothing, I bit back a smile. The thrill of it electric. My plan was working. Harry stammered, his hands raised, but Sophia wasn't listening.
You've humiliated me, she shouted, her voice cracking.
I won't let this go, Harry, I won't. He grabbed his phone, his fingers fumbling, and dialed. I pulled out my own phone, recording the chaos, the audio muffled but clear enough. Laura, we've got a problem, he said, his voice low, panicked. My pulse surged. He was calling her. The game was escalating just as I'd hoped. Sophia snatched a photo, tearing it in half. Who's Laura? Tell me. Harry turned away, muttering into the phone, but I couldn't hear the rest.
I didn't need to.
The seeds were planted and they were sprouting fast. I slipped back into the shadows, my keys jingling softly. The night air was cool, the street lamp flickering like my resolve, steady but ready to flare. I reached my car, sliding into the driver's seat. The engine purred to life and I pulled away. Harry's house shrinking in the rear view. Laura was at the hospital, probably getting that call now, her lies unraveling. I gripped the wheel, the road stretching toward the hospital where the next move waited. The envelope was gone, but its truth was alive, and so was I. The front door creaked as Laura stepped into the house, her suitcase thewing against the floorboards. Sunlight streamed through the living room window, catching the dust motes that danced in the air. The familiar smell of coffee lingered, but it felt wrong, like a stage set for a play I no longer believed in. I stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching her. She smiled. Too bright, too practiced. Home sweet home, she said, her voice light, but her eyes flicked away from mine.
I nodded, my jaw tight.
Need help with that? I gestured to the suitcase, my tone flat. She shook her head, dragging it toward the stairs, her movements jerky, like she was trying to outrun something.
I knew what Harry's call last night. The photos Sophia had seen, the cracks in their secret world.
She thought she could play normal, but her trembling hands betrayed her. She set the kettle on, the click of the stove loud in the quiet. You look tired, John, she said, rummaging for tea bags. Everything okay? Fine, I said, leaning against the counter. My eyes caught the hallway mirror, reflecting her forced calm, her fingers twisting the tiag string. That mirror had seen us laugh, argue, make up. Now it showed a lie. "You seem jumpy," I added, my voice low. She laughed, a brittle sound. "Just the hospital, all those machines." But her phone buzzed on the counter, and she snatched it, her thumb swiping the screen before I could see. I thought of her messages with Harry, her mocking words about me. My chest burned, but I kept my face blank. The kettle whistled, and she poured water, steam curling around her like a veil. I remembered a night years ago after a fight about money when she'd hugged me, promising we'd always be honest. That Laura was a ghost now, replaced by this stranger who couldn't meet my eyes. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the cafe on Elm, near 2 p.m. I know what they did." Sophia. My pulse quickened. Sophia, Harry's wife. I slipped the phone away, my mind racing. "I'm heading out," I said, grabbing my jacket. Laura's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. So soon. Her voice was too casual, her fingers tightening on the mug. "Where to?" "Errands," I said, already at the door. The mirror caught my reflection as I left. Harder, sharper, not the man she thought she knew. The cafe was bustling, the air thick with the scent of vanilla and fresh bread. I spotted Sophia at a corner table, her face drawn, her nails tapping the rim of a coffee cup. The window beside her acted like a mirror, reflecting our shared resolve. She looked up as I sat, her eyes fierce but tired.
"John Wright," she said, her voice low. "They humiliated us."
"Both of them." I nodded, my throat tight. "What do you know?" "Harry's been lying for years," she said, leaning closer.
"Not just with her. He's hiding things. Money deals. I want him to pay." Her words lit something in me.
A spark of possibility. She slid a USB drive across the table, her fingers brushing the wood.
"This has proof. Financial records."
"Use it." I took the drive, its weight heavy in my palm.
"Why me?" I asked, my voice steady despite the adrenaline.
"Because you're not like them," she said. "You're smart and you're angry." She paused, her eyes locked on mine, like me. The cafe's noise faded, the mirror-like window showing us as allies in a war neither of us chose. I pocketed the drive, my fingers brushing the rough fabric of my jacket. "We'll make them regret this," I said, and she nodded, a grim smile flickering. I left the cafe, the USB drive, a quiet promise in my pocket. The street was bright, the autumn wind sharp. I headed home, the weight of Sophia's words and the drive pulling me forward toward a truth I was ready to wield. The bar was a haze of smoke and low light, the kind of place where deals were made in whispers. I crouched behind a parked van across the street. The asphalt cold under my knees. Harry sat at a back table, his suit rumpled, his face taut as he slid an envelope to a man in a leather jacket. The man, lean, sharp-eyed, a private detective if I had to guess, pocketed it, nodding. My stomach twisted. They were coming for me. I'd followed Harry here after spotting him leaving his office, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice clipped. The USB drive Sophia gave me burned in my pocket, its secrets about his finances still unopened. I needed to know what he was planning, how close he was to unraveling my moves. The bar's neon sign buzzed, casting shadows that hit me as I strained to hear.
"Find who sent those photos," Harry said, his voice carrying through the open window.
"I don't care what it costs."
"Do it fast." The detective leaned back, his fingers drumming the table.
"Got a description? Anything?" "Older guy, probably," Harry muttered. "Someone with a grudge?" My pulse spiked.
"Older guy, me." I shifted.
The van's metal cold against my shoulder. The shadows felt thinner, like they couldn't protect me much longer. I slipped away, my shoes silent on the pavement, and drove home, my hands tight on the wheel. The house was dark when I arrived, the only sound the hum of the fridge. Laura was in the living room, a glass of wine in hand, her eyes flicking to me as I entered.
"Late night," she said, her voice soft but edged, like a blade wrapped in silk.
"Had things to do," I said, hanging my jacket. The USB drive stayed in my pocket, its weight grounding me. She stood, her movements slow, deliberate, and crossed to the coffee table, picking up a book. But her eyes lingered on my jacket, searching.
You've been acting strange, John, she said, setting the glass down.
So suspicious. It's not like you. Her tone was pitying, but her fingers twitched, betraying her.
I thought of a time she'd lied about a girl's night.
Her smile too bright, her excuses too smooth. She was playing that game again. Maybe I've got reasons, I said, my voice low. Her eyes narrowed, but she laughed, brushing it off. You're imagining things, she said, turning away. But I caught her glance at my desk where my laptop sat, its lid half open. She was looking for something.
Proof maybe that I knew.
I stepped closer, blocking her view, and she froze, her smile faltering. Get some rest, I said, my tone final. She nodded, retreating upstairs, but the air felt charged like a storm about to break. I waited until her footsteps faded, then checked the desk. A drawer was ajar. Papers shifted. She'd been snooping. My blood ran cold. Later, as I locked the front door, I saw a car parked down the street, its headlights off, a shadow inside. The detective maybe, or someone he'd hired. My heart pounded, but I forced myself to stay calm. I slipped the USB drive into my sock, its edges pressing against my skin, and pulled out my phone. Sophia's number glowed on the screen. I dialed, my voice low. We've got trouble, I said, as she picked up, my eyes on the car outside, its shadow looming like a threat I couldn't outrun. Harry's office was a mess of papers and coffee cups, the kind of chaos that screamed panic. I sat at his desk, the monitors glow harsh against the evening dark. Sophia stood by the door, her arms crossed, her eyes darting to the hallway. She'd gotten us in with a spare key Harry hadn't bothered to hide. His arrogance, our advantage. The USB drive was plugged in, its files spilling secrets across the screen, offshore accounts, faked invoices, deals that could ruin him. My fingers flew over the keyboard, my old engineering instincts kicking in. I'd solved problems like this before. Circuits, systems, puzzles with clean solutions. This was messier, but the logic held. Look at this, I said, pointing to a spreadsheet. He's been siphoning money for years.
This could send him to jail. Sophia leaned in, her breath catching.
That's enough to bury him, she said, her voice trembling with something like hope.
And her? She meant Laura. I nodded, my jaw tight.
The files mentioned a joint account, Laura's name tied to Harry's schemes. She wasn't just cheating, she was complicit. I copied the files, the progress bar ticking slowly. My mind flashed to a late night at work years ago, debugging a design while Laura called.
Annoyed I'd missed dinner. I thought I was building a life for us.
Now I was dismantling hers. The thought steadied me, my hands sure as I worked.
A noise in the hall made us freeze.
Sophia pressed a finger to her lips, slipping to the door.
God, she whispered.
I yanked the USB drive out, shoving it into my pocket, and we ducked behind a filing cabinet. The guard's flashlight swept the room, its beam missing us by inches. My heart hammered, but I kept still. The documents weight in my mind heavier than the risk. He left and we exhaled, slipping out through a back exit. The night air was sharp, the city lights blurring as we headed to the park for cover. We sat on a bench, the woods slick with dew, and reviewed the files on my phone. We've got him, Sophia said, her voice fierce. We need an attorney.
Someone discreet.
I nodded, already dialing a contact I'd found online, a lawyer known for taking down white-collar crooks.
I've got what you need, I told him, keeping my voice low. Can we meet tomorrow?
He agreed, and I hung up, the plan solidifying like concrete. A rustle in the bushes made me turn. A shadow moved, quick and deliberate. Laura. I caught her silhouette, her scarf catching the moonlight, before she slipped behind a tree. My stomach dropped. She was following me, piecing things together. I didn't let on, keeping my voice steady as I spoke to Sophia. We move fast, I said.
They're closing in.
Sophia didn't notice her eyes on the phone screen, but I felt Laura's presence, her suspicion like a weight. I remembered her in the hospital, her lies smooth as glass. She thought she knew me, thought she could outsmart me. She was wrong. I stood, the document's truth burning in my pocket, and headed for my car.
Sophia at my side.
The park was quiet, but Laura's shadow lingered in my mind, a reminder that the game wasn't over. I glanced back, her figure gone, swallowed by the trees, and drove toward the lawyer's office. The night stretching out like a challenge I was ready to meet. The morning sun glinted off the glass facade of Harry's office building, its sleek lines, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding below. I stood across the street, half hidden by a newsstand, my breath visible in the October chill. Police cars lined the curb, their lights flashing silently, a crowd of onlookers murmuring behind me. Harry emerged, his hands cuffed, his tailored suit wrinkled, his face pale as an officer guided him toward a cruiser. The clink of the handcuffs echoed, sharp and final, like the end of a lie.
I didn't move, didn't blink.
The USB drive Sophia had given me, its files meticulously handed to the lawyer, had done its work. Offshore accounts, faked invoices. Harry's empire of deceit crumbled in real time. His eyes scanned the crowd, desperate, but they didn't find me.
I was just another face, a stranger watching his downfall.
My chest swelled not with joy, but with something heavier. Justice, hard won and cold. I turned away, the city's hum fading as I drove home. The house loomed ahead, its faded, citing a reminder of the life I'd once clung to. Inside, Laura waited, her suitcase by the door, her eyes red-rimmed. She stood as I entered, her hands twisting together, her voice trembling. "John, we need to talk." I set my keys on the counter, the clatter loud in the silence. "Talk," I said, my tone flat. The kitchen smelled of old coffee, the air thick with her panic. She stepped closer, her scarf slipping from her shoulder, her words rushing out.
"I made a mistake," she said, tears brimming.
Harry was a fantasy. "We can fix this, John, we can go back." I stared at her, the woman I'd loved for 39 years, and saw only her messages with Harry, her laughter at my expense. Clueless bore.
I thought of the roses I'd given her, the nights I'd stayed up fixing her problems, the life I'd built for us. "Fix this," I said, my voice low, steady.
"You broke it, Laura." Years ago her face crumpled, but I felt no pity.
"Please," she whispered, reaching for me. "I'm sorry."
"Your chance ended when you lied," I said, stepping back. "When you chose him." I moved to the bedroom, pulling a duffel bag from the closet. I packed shirts, books, a photo of our kids, but nothing of hers. She followed, her voice rising, desperate.
"This isn't you, John. You don't walk away." I zipped the bag, my hand steady.
"You don't know me," I said, meeting her eyes. "You never did." Her sob caught in her throat, but I walked past the floorboards creaking under my weight. My phone buzzed. "Sophia," I answered, stepping outside, the cool air sharp against my skin. "We did it," she said, her voice warm, triumphant. "He's done." "Thanks to you," I said, glancing back at the house. Laura stood in the doorway, her silhouette small, broken.
"I owe you."
"You owe yourself," Sophia said.
"You're free now." I hung up.
The word echoing. Free. The cruiser's lights had faded, but the handcuffs' clink lingered in my mind, a symbol of Harry's end and mine. I slid into my car, the duffel bag on the passenger seat, and pulled away, the house shrinking in the rear view. A new apartment waited. The apartment smelled of fresh paint and possibility. I stood in the living room. I set the photo on a shelf, my fingers lingering on the glass, their smiles a quiet anchor. Laura's face wasn't here.
It didn't belong anymore.
I moved to the window, the glass cool against my palm. The suburbs stretched below, quiet and unfamiliar, a blank slate. A week had passed since Harry's arrest, since I'd left Laura standing in our old house, her pleas fading behind me. The weight of those 39 years was gone, replaced by something lighter, fragile but real.
Hope, maybe.
The doorbell buzzed, and I opened it to find Sophia, 2 coffee cups in her hands, her smile warm. "Housewarming gift," she said, handing me one. The steam curled upward, its aroma grounding me. "Looks like you're settling in." "Trying," I said, gesturing to the boxes. "It's different." We sat on the couch, the only furniture I'd bought so far, its fabric stiff under us. She glanced at the window, the sunset painting the sky in reds and golds. "You deserve this," she said, her voice soft but firm. "A fresh start." I sipped the coffee, its bitterness sharp. "Didn't think I'd get here," I admitted. Not after everything. I thought of Laura's messages, her voice calling me predictable, her betrayal slicing through decades of trust. Sophia's hand brushed mine.
A fleeting touch, but it sparked something.
Warmth possibility.
Let's walk, she suggested, standing.
We headed to the nearby park, the air crisp leaves crunching under our shoes. The park was alive with dusk, kids chasing a ball, couples strolling. Sophia laughed at a squirrel darting up a tree, her ease pulling me out of my head. You're quieter than usual, she said, nudging me. Just thinking, I said, about how she made me feel invisible. The words slipped out raw but true. I remembered Laura's dismissive glances, her laughter with Harry. Sophia stopped, her eyes meeting mine.
You're not invisible, she said, her voice steady. Not to me. Her hand rested on my arm longer this time, and I felt a stir, a flicker of something I hadn't allowed myself to imagine.
Not love, not yet, but a door opening. We walked on, the sky darkening, the park's lights glowing softly. Back at the apartment, I noticed an envelope on the counter slip through the mail slot while we were out. Laura's handwriting stared back, neat and familiar. My stomach tightened, but I didn't open it. I slid it into a drawer, the wood scraping shut, locking her words away.
You okay? Sophia asked, watching me.
Yeah, I said, managing a smile. Fancy a charity event tomorrow. Something local. I could use the company. She grinned, her eyes bright. You're on. I walked her to the door, the window behind me framing the night sky, its stars faint but clear. The envelope stayed in the drawer, unopened, as I turned to the window, the world beyond it wide and waiting. The community centre buzzed with life, its hall filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the warm scent of baked goods. Strings of lights hung from the ceiling, casting a soft glow over the crowd. Apologies, regrets, a plea for forgiveness.
I was wrong, John. I see that now.
But they were just words hollow after years of lies. I'd skimmed it, then set it aside, the weight of her guilt no longer mine to carry. The apartment's silence had felt peaceful, the air tinged with the scent of tea'd brood, its steam curling toward the open window. Here. The noise of the crowd was a welcome contrast. Sophia turned to me, her smile wide. You're a hit, she said, nodding toward a group of organizers who'd thanked me for the donation.
They're calling you the hero of the night. I laughed, the sound easier than it had been in years.
Hardly just doing what I can. But their gratitude warmed me, a reminder of who I could be without Laura's shadow. I thought of her criticism, how she'd scoffed at my generosity, calling it naive. Now standing here, I felt anything but. Sophia raised her glass, her eyes sparkling. The moment light, but charged. The band struck up a slow tune and she tilted her head. Dance? She asked, her tone playful. I hesitated, then took her hand, her fingers warm in mine. We moved to the floor, the music wrapping around us, her laughter soft as we swayed. The crowd blurred, the lights dimming to a golden haze. For the first time in decades, I felt seen not as a husband or a fool, but as me. You're stronger than they ever knew, Sophia said, her voice close, her breath brushing my cheek. I thought of Laura's letter, its words fading in my mind, powerless. So are you, I said, my voice steady. She squeezed my hand, and I knew this, whatever it was, could grow if we let it. The song ended, and we stepped back, still smiling. I glanced at the window, the night sky beyond speckled with stars, their light faint but steady. The crowd's chatter swelled, pulling me back, but the stars stayed with me, a quiet promise. Sophia nudged me, pointing to a friend waving us over, and we laughed, moving toward the warmth of the room. The future open and alive. If you like this story, please like this video, share and subscribe to the channel.